My mother-in-law arrived unannounced, just as she always did, and, of course, at the worst possible time. I had been in the middle of proving my point to Kyle about buying a new washer-dryer combo. We were comparing models, discussing features, when the doorbell rang. Sighing, I went to answer it. The moment I opened the door, Agnes swept past me, heading straight for her son, who was sitting in the kitchen, scrolling through appliance ads on his laptop. "What are you two up to? Did I hear correctly, you're buying a washing machine? Is that true, dear?" she asked, her gaze fixed on Kyle. Behind her back, I rolled my eyes and pulled a face. Kyle, catching the expression, chuckled. "Something funny?" Agnes asked, narrowing her eyes. "Yes, Mom, you heard right. We're planning to get a new washing machine," Kyle confirmed. "For what?" she asked, genuinely baffled. She dragged a chair closer, peering over his shoulder. Then, clutching her chest dramatically, she let out a gasp. "How much are they charging for these things? Have you lost your minds?" She waved her hands in exasperation. I shrugged. "It's a necessary purchase." And it was. Our old machine was on its last legs, constantly flashing error messages for no reason. It barely handled small loads, let alone the mountain of laundry our household produced. With twins in the house, the dirty clothes piled up fast. On top of that, Kyle, who worked at an auto repair shop, often brought home grimy work uniforms. The machine simply couldn't keep up anymore. I opened my mouth to explain all this, but Agnes cut me off. "Kyle, why are you letting her push you into this? She should just wash by hand. People these days rely too much on machines, no wonder they've grown lazy." "What's next? A nanny for the kids so she can run off with her friends? Maybe a cook, too? Heaven forbid she actually stands at the stove," she scoffed. This conversation was going nowhere fast. Agnes wasn't listening, she was just determined to be right. "In my day, we washed clothes in the river, and no one complained," she declared. "You must have money to burn if you're willing to waste it on nonsense like this. Well, don't expect a single penny from me." "Mom, we weren't asking for your money," Kyle said, his patience thinning. "We can afford this. I have a job. Christy does freelance work from home, and soon she'll be working full-time. We also have savings. I don't see why you're making such a big deal out of this." "Oh, I know exactly what's going to happen," Agnes shot back. "You'll waste your money now, and later, when you're broke, you'll come running to me for help. Well, forget it, I won't lend you a dime." "We're not asking you," I said, struggling to keep my temper in check. Needing a moment to cool off, I stepped onto the balcony and took a deep breath of fresh air. "Unbelievable," I muttered under my breath. I'd always known Agnes could be difficult, but this was the worst outburst yet. The irony was, we had never asked her for money, not as a loan, not even as a gift. From the start, Kyle and I had agreed that if we were going to build a life together, we would handle our finances on our own. Even when we decided to have children, we planned everything carefully, knowing I'd be on maternity leave for a while. We tracked every dollar, balancing our income and expenses with precision. Not once had we gone over budget. The only surprise we hadn't accounted for was when the ultrasound revealed not one baby, but two. I took my mother-in-law by the arm while Kyle grabbed the oversized checkered bag from the doorway, and our odd little trio made its way downstairs. "Where are we going? Aren't we washing the clothes in the bathroom?" Agnes asked, clearly perplexed. "Oh no, I can't risk that," I said with an innocent smile. "Our bathtub is pristine white, and between the kids' clothes and Kyle's grease-stained workwear, I'd never get it clean again. We're going to the river." "You said washing clothes in the river was perfectly normal, didn't you?" Agnes stiffened. "I never exactly said that," she muttered uncertainly, but, perhaps out of pride, she climbed into the car anyway. For over an hour, I bit my lip to keep from laughing, but with each passing minute, it became harder to hold back. My mother-in-law, who had so confidently preached about old-fashioned laundry methods, was struggling. She had stumbled into the water twice, lost her scrubbing brush, and dropped the soap more times than I could count. Every now and then, she let out an irritated grunt as she tried to grab a pair of tiny pants that kept floating downstream instead of staying put for her to wash. Kyle, who had wisely retreated to the car, was no help. His laughter echoed from inside, growing louder each time Agnes fumbled with the clothes. "Mom, maybe I can help you," I offered sweetly, watching her sweat under the midday sun. That was the breaking point. Agnes shot me a furious glare, hurled a pair of soaking wet pants in my direction, and unleashed a string of profanities. "To hell with this laundry," she exploded. "I am never doing this again. Don't you dare ask me, do you hear me?" She stomped out of the river, soaking wet and fuming, and flung herself into the back seat of the car. "Son, take me home, now," she ordered. Kyle, barely containing his amusement, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "But Mom, what about Christy? She still has to finish the washing. I need my work clothes by the day after tomorrow, and they'll need a full day to dry." "Maybe you should go help her?" he asked, feigning concern. Agnes whipped around to face him, her eyes blazing. I will not go back in there. What kind of Stone Age nonsense is washing clothes in a river? Just buy the damn washing machine and let her do whatever she wants. And just like that, peace was restored in our household. The washing machine arrived the very next day, and from that moment on, Agnes never questioned another appliance purchase. In fact, she became the machine's biggest fan, singing its praises to anyone who would listen. From then on, she only visited with prior notice and solely to spend time with her grandchildren, and if she ever overheard something she didn't approve of, she'd suddenly go deaf and blind, pretending not to notice. One thing was certain, she had learned her lesson, and while she was still happy to offer help, there was one thing she would never, ever do. Lend us money. That, it seemed, was the one principle she would never abandon. I truly couldn't understand what had gotten into my mother-in-law. Sure, she had her quirks, like the time she shaved the twins' heads on their first birthday without telling us, ignoring the fact that one of them was a girl, or when she marched into church and insisted the priest give them proper church names because, in her day, children were named according to their birth dates, and that was apparently the superior way. Over the years, I had learned to pick my battles, but meddling in our finances, that was a step too far. She had no right to poke her nose into how we ran our household. My home was spotless, with 2 little ones. I cleaned the floors more often than I breathed, and there was always fresh food on the table. I made sure of that. I woke up earlier than everyone else so that by the time they got up, breakfast was ready and waiting. But my patience wasn't infinite. If Agnes wanted a fight, she was going to get one, and I would make sure she learned to mind her own business, especially when it came to our money. I returned to the kitchen, expecting a showdown, but my mother-in-law was gone. "Where's Mom?" I asked, glancing at Kyle. "I sent her home. She was probably upset that I stood up for you. She stormed out like a bat out of hell," he said with a shrug. "What was that even about?" I wondered aloud. "I have no idea, darling, but I promise, I'll talk to her once she calms down. Oh, and by the way, I already ordered the washing machine. It'll be here in a few days," he added. "Well done, thank you, dear, but actually, do me a favor, don't talk to your mom just yet. Instead, bring home a couple of your dirtiest work pants and shirts," I said with a sly smile. Kyle shot me a confused look. "Christy, why? Just bring them when the washing machine arrives," I replied, my tone light but full of intent. The second he saw my expression, it clicked. He grinned. "All right, what exactly are you planning?" "Nothing drastic, just a small lesson," I said innocently, "and don't go painting me as the villain, it's harmless, I swear, no violence involved." We both laughed and sat down to eat. By the next morning, everything was set, the stage for my lesson was ready. Right on cue, Agnes showed up at our door. As she stepped inside, she nearly tripped over a large checkered bag sitting in the entryway. "Christy, can't you put your junk somewhere else?" she grumbled, stepping over it with a huff. Then, as if she hadn't barged in uninvited, she looked around and asked, "Well, did you buy it?" "Buy what?" Kyle played along. "Your gold-plated washing machine," she scoffed. Kyle shook his head. "No, Mom, we didn't buy it, we listened to your advice." A satisfied smirk spread across her face. "Well, good for you, at least you're not wasting money on nonsense," she said with a nod of approval. That was my cue. "Mom," I said sweetly, "that's all well and good, but there's a bit of a problem. Our old washing machine finally gave up completely." I sighed dramatically. "So, as a dutiful daughter-in-law, I must humbly bow my head before you and ask for help. You wouldn't refuse, would you?" Agnes blinked in surprise, a faint blush creeping up her cheeks. Still, she nodded graciously. "Well, of course, I'll help. But, with what, exactly? I hope you're not asking for money. I don't have any to spare," she added quickly, suddenly wary. I gasped, feigning shock. "Oh, heavens no, I wouldn't dream of it. It's just, well, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I never properly learned to wash clothes by hand." I clasped my hands together and smiled. "So, I was hoping you could teach me." And before she could object, I grabbed the checkered bag and dumped its contents at her feet, Kyle's grease-stained work clothes. The color drained from her face. "Let the lesson begin,"